Davante Adams and Najee Harris's fantasy future is looking up after signing with new teams this week. We discuss the fantasy impact of free agency signings across the NFL on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
We have had more signings come through over the last couple of days with free agency. We hit on some of the biggest moves already on yesterday's show. A lot of the quarterbacks, Geno Smith moving, Sam Darnold, Justin Fields, DK Metcalf. So if you missed that episode, you can go listen there. But there's still a lot more we have to hit on, especially with Davante Adams and Najee Harris, and then some other smaller signings that could also have a fantasy impact. So let's start with Davante Adams. He signs with the Rams. I think this is a great landing spot for him, right? Because we know his quarterback would be Matthew Stafford. They decided to keep him, not trade him, gave him the new contract. And yeah, Puka Nacua is there, but the reports are that Cooper Kupp will be released if they can't find a trade partner for him shortly here. So Davante Adams goes into a situation where he's clear cut for, he's not going to get like 170 targets because Puka's there, but he's still going to get a very large workload.
Yeah, it's going to basically go through these two guys unless they add a significant tight end in the draft, and that could happen, that somebody could cut into that work. But these two guys are going to be the main men in Los Angeles now. And you look at Davante Adams, he does a few things that Puka Nacua does not do in terms of get open in the short area a little bit better. Puka Nacua is going to be the field stretcher. Well, you have Davante Adams, a great red zone threat. I mean, we know he's had multiple seasons of easy double-digit touchdowns in his career, so he's going to get the pay dirt most likely and replace a lot of the shorter routes that we've seen with Cooper Kupp, where Matthew Stafford targets him in the end zone quite a bit. So I would say a lot of those are just going to go straight to Davante Adams. Adams can actually line up inside at times the way that Cooper Kupp has, and Kupp was not exclusively a slot receiver either, right? They move him around the formation to get him open. So Adams is smart enough, savvy enough, great hands to do all that stuff and get open. We just saw that when he got going and he got the targets, he was able to put up some good fantasy numbers, even with the Jets opposite Garrett Wilson. He's going to get his numbers. He's always finding a way to do it, whether he's the main man, whether he's sharing the spotlight with another guy. So really the only concern I have here is two number 17s, who's going to get the ball a little bit more, fight over that number. But I think there'll be plenty of targets to go around for both of these guys, and I think they'll be very pleased. So I'm going to start very loosely with Davante Adams as a high-end wide receiver 2, while we know Puka, he's a wide receiver 1.
Yeah, last year, we can say it was a down year for him, and it was, right, for Davante Adams, but he still was the wide receiver 10 of fantasy points per game on the season at 14.2 points per game. That's like really good in half PPR. That's still a super good fantasy year at 32 years old. 31 for most of the season he's 32 now. He'll be 33 in December. But then once he goes to the Jets, right, because it started off pretty rocky there with the Raiders, didn't do much. He had one big game. And then it also started pretty slow with the Jets. And then once he got going, though, from weeks 9 through 18, so a whole second half of the season, he was the wide receiver 4 on average during that span at 16.8 points per game in half PPR. That was only behind Jamar Chase, Mike Evans, and T. Higgins during that span. So I do think Davante Adams has a lot left in the tank, and I think this is a great signing for the Rams, right? Now, Puka Nacua will be going super early in drafts next year, and we had him ranked top 5 in our early consensus rankings. Does this move him down, though, just a little bit? Because we know how a lot of that Puka Nacua was, Cooper Kupp's going to be gone. He's going to get, he's in line for 160, 170 targets. I do think maybe that's a little bit lower now. And then also Adams is so good at catching touchdowns, and that's never really been Puka's game so far throughout his career. Does that also limit him there? Would this make you push him down just a little bit? Not too far, but maybe a couple spots.
Yeah, definitely you have to think about it. And Cooper Kupp was near the end. He was replaced by Puka Nacua because of the injury. Then he came back slowly. So Nacua had to step up and be a bigger presence. While Adams is not nearly at that level of being washed up, or the Rams would make this move where they're basically pushing Kupp out the door, going to release him if they don't trade him, and then very excited to sign Davante Adams. So they don't make this aggressive move unless they thought Adams was an upgrade from Cooper Kupp. Why else would he do it? And you can score in the red zone, I think, to help them with that. I mean, Kupp has lost a few steps, while Adams is still making some big plays. Like, he can do that as well, get downfield if needed. And the coverage is going to roll to both of these guys. So I think you'll have favorable opportunities on the outside for both. So I'm excited about it. Again, Matthew Stafford, again, looks to be in business here. He was about to leave the Rams. Now he's back. Now he's got two real good receivers. So I think he's definitely a sleeper. I think I definitely look at him even ahead of like Geno Smith and Sam Darnold. We just talked about them. Stafford has put up the numbers before. He's got the guys at this point. He just is in a little bit of a slump sometimes, but overall he can be in that top 12. So I think he has more appeal. Justin Fields is already kind of a QB1, but I'd say if Darnold and Smith regress a little bit, I think that opportunity comes right to Stafford to get into the top 12.
Yeah, he's going to be really interesting. He's going to be right there with like the Jared Goff, right? Because they're both guys that are not super mobile, not mobile like really at all. And I don't think it'd be that crazy to have him in the top 12 now that you get like giving him Davante Adams, who even when he has a down year, it's 8 receiving touchdowns, right? And he missed a chunk of games last year. He's going to get his double-digit touchdowns. And when it's really just Adams and Puka Nacua, like you can't really envision this offense not just running through those two, like funneling that, and you love that. So I think this is good for Matthew Stafford. This doesn't give him a top 5 ceiling or anything like that because there's no running. So, but I would definitely rather have Stafford than Sam Darnold or Geno Smith next year for sure. We had another big signing, Najee Harris to the Chargers. And let me tell you, I mean, I'm going to buy back in to Najee now. I mean, I almost wish it didn't happen, but we'll talk about that signing and then also Aaron Jones staying with the Vikings right after we take a quick break.
This show is sponsored by Betterhelp. Taking care of your mental health can feel like a big investment, but it's just as important as taking care of your body. So, important time of year to do that as well as we get out of our New Year's resolutions and we're into spring. You need to constantly have that person giving that guide to navigate through life. And traditional in-person therapy can cost anywhere from $100 to $250 per session. But with BetterHelp, you can save up to 50% per session. BetterHelp offers a flat fee for weekly online therapy sessions, making professional support more accessible and affordable for you. With more than 30,000 therapists and more than 5 million people helped, it's the world's largest online therapy platform. And you got to consider that you can go there and have the personal touch you're looking for. You can really get yourself where you need to be with self-care. It's very important. I see a therapist regularly, and the impact can be immeasurable with just your emotions and grounding you a little bit. And it's important when we have busy lives to take time for therapy. And really, you can take time and benefit from therapy. Everyone can. Just having the right person to talk to, and BetterHelp is going to give you that person. Your well-being is worth it. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, H-E-L-P, BetterHelp.com/lockedon. All right, Michelle, let us look at some other moves in free agency. This one, it was so weird because Jim Harbaugh was recruiting this guy. He was wearing his high school T-shirt. They were going out and getting him. It was kind of like he was in Michigan again and trying to get a prize recruit. That's how they treated Najee Harris. So I would think on the surface, that's a really good thing for Najee Harris's value with the Chargers, who were basically getting him to replace J.K. Dobbins as their power back of choice.
Yeah, and they also cut Gus Edwards. So right now, Najee Harris is in line for a huge workload, and we know his body can handle it. He has not missed a game yet in his career. He's gotten a huge workload every single year. Now, you never know with running backs, because this could be the one year he has injury. But going into the season, unless they draft a guy super early, you wouldn't assume they're going to do that since they signed Najee in free agency. How does he not get 300 touches next year with the way that Jim Harbaugh loves to play the game or loves to coach, right? With running with playing good defense. And then also now Najee is also with a really good quarterback that knows how to check down. I was saying with J.K. Dobbins that maybe the Chargers would look for an upgrade for a receiver, right? A receiving back. Najee's actually a really, really good receiving back. So I'm excited to see him here. This was my favorite fit when we went through this on last Thursday's show. We went through free agent running backs and where we want to see them be. I said Najee, I would like him to be with the Chargers. Now the money is not huge, so it's not like they paid a ton where you can feel super confident that he'll definitely be the main guy. But there's a lot of incentives in there, and I do think he will be. I will say, like, the biggest issue with him for fantasy over the years has been he's been on a really, really bad offense with no scoring opportunities. And I think that changes a lot here. The Chargers running backs had 15 rushing touchdowns last season. The Steelers running backs had 7. So I do think his touchdowns are going to go up. And how do you rank him outside of the top 20 now?
Yeah, I think he's definitely a top 20 running back. And you made a really good point because you go all the way back to his rookie year when he transitioned and they had more of a legitimate quarterback back there. And he was a big receiver in that year. That's really what kind of padded his numbers as a rookie and made him very appealing in fantasy. So I think that part of his game comes back into play. I also like the fact that the Chargers with Harbaugh and Greg Roman wanted him. So they wanted him. They went after him. I look at the money. I mean, $9.5 million is quite a bit here for Najee Harris because he's coming off a down year in which the Steelers didn't love him all that much, right? They were still trying to look at Jalen Warren and that change of pace role, but also expand it. Well, I think legitimately, maybe this is a better offense for Najee because we know what they're going to do, pound, pound, pound. They've got the offensive line to do it. You open it up, throw downfield to Justin Herbert. Herbert's not going to take off and run as much either. So he's going to definitely throw the shorter passes, much like we've seen Ben Roethlisberger do in the past Steelers offenses. So I'm excited for Najee. This is good. Gets him out of that Pittsburgh doldrums, gets him into an offense we know is going to be great. And I think the arrow keeps pointing out in general for everything Chargers. So we love Justin Herbert this offseason. I think Ladd McConkey goes up. Everything is just pointing in a great direction here for the Chargers as they're year 2 of Harbaugh and Roman.
This feels so much like the Packers signing Josh Jacobs last year, right? Josh Jacobs' efficiency with the Raiders was really bad, right? And he had a really bad last year with them, and they were definitely like pushing him out the door. And then he gets signed by the Packers, and all of a sudden he's on a good offense that knows how to utilize him. And he was a great fantasy back that year, or this year. So I'm excited to see what Najee can do, and I'm sure I'll rank him too high again because I keep falling for the Najee Harris hype. He's my Kyle Pitts, I guess, for you, or Trevor Lawrence, I should say. Now we'll have to watch where J.K. Dobbins goes. He is not signed with anyone yet. Now maybe the Chargers decide to bring him back too. It could be Dobbins and Najee, and then that kind of ruins both of their values. So that would stink, but we'll see where he ends up. Now, Aaron Jones re-signed with the Vikings. He was super solid last year. He was a really solid fantasy asset, running back 20 in fantasy points per game. He's 30 years old. He'll turn 31 this season, late in December, but he still put up over 1,500 scrimmage yards in 2024. That was 7th among running backs. The biggest issue with him was not scoring touchdowns. It was only 5 rushing touchdowns. I don't know if those are going to go up, but I feel like he'll be exactly what he was last year, running back 20 and a really good value.
Yeah, I think the nice thing that happens, and we don't always look at these moves that go along with that running back, but they took 2/3 of the Colts interior starting offensive line. They added Ryan Kelly. Garrett Bradbury, they've been up and down on him at center. Like he's had some moments, but they've also been on the brink of cutting him. So they wanted to get someone more solid there. Kelly. And I really like Will Freeze, however you want to say it. He is a very good guard, especially in the running game. These two guys are pretty huge for Jonathan Taylor. So they come back with better run blocking here for Aaron Jones. And we'll see about the quarterback situation. I think they'll go to J.J. McCarthy full-time if he's healthy. I would say they might lean on Jones even more, not just to run the ball behind these two new guys, and they have a pretty good offensive line otherwise. If Christian Darrisaw comes back healthy at left tackle, they can run better. And I think you'll get the checkdowns too, right? You have a young quarterback. J.J. McCarthy is a little bit mobile, but he's not a guy who just takes off and runs like some of these other guys. I think he's going to be smart and dump it off here to Jones. So I think Jones can put together a really nice overall season. I think you have to have some insurance for him because he's older and maybe they just stick with what they had. Cam Akers, that type of mix here. But Jones should see a lot of touches again. He's another solid, right up there with Najee Harris, a top 20 running back, I think.
Yeah, and Jones was much better than Najee Harris this past year, a couple more points per game on the season. But let me ask you, now that Najee's changing teams to the Chargers, and you're in the draft this upcoming year, are you taking Najee Harris or Aaron Jones?
This is a good question. I think I'm going with Najee Harris for the upside, because I think the Chargers overall are going to be a more balanced team with run and pass, where I think the Vikings still are a pretty aggressive passing team, right? And Aaron Jones is kind of just a complementary piece to that, where I think they're going to have the bread and butter. That Chargers offense is still going to be pounding it. And you've mentioned the touchdowns. I mean, that alone, like, this team likes to run in the red zone, where the Vikings like to throw a little bit more of the red zone. So just the touchdowns alone, and Harris is capable of doing that, right? He's a big enough back. You can plow through, and now you got two guys in the middle that can help push him over the goal line. So I do like him a little bit more than Aaron Jones. Again, Jones is going to be solid. I think if you go full PPR, you might lean towards Jones, but half and standard, I think you go Najee Harris for sure.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, Najee has been, last year it was bad for touchdown 6, right? But the Steelers offense overall has just been bad. 8 in 2023, but he had 10 touchdowns in both 2022 and 2021. Again, still on bad offenses there. So I do think there's a lot of upside, and I'm with you. I'd go for the Najee Harris side over Aaron Jones as well. We are going to get into a few more signings, much smaller, but there could still be some fantasy relevance here, especially for one of these guys. I really like it. So we'll get into that to end today's show right after a quick break. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you're going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. All right, we had some interesting moves yesterday, and I want to talk about the two wide receivers. Christian Kirk was traded to the Texans. Josh Palmer signs with the Bills. They're both in a spot that they're going to be a starting wide receiver, right? At least it looks like that. And then we had Javonte Williams to the Cowboys, which I don't know if that's exciting, and I don't know why they didn't just re-sign Rico Dowdle, and then focus on the drafting a running back. But let's talk about the two wide receivers first. How do you feel about the Christian Kirk to the Texans? Because when he's healthy and on the field, he is actually a really solid wide receiver. He's given us solid fantasy performances and weeks, and even a good season in there too. And with the Texans, I mean, they have Nico Collins and pretty much nothing else right now at wide receiver. So Christian Kirk is going to come into Houston and instantly probably be the wide receiver 2 on this team until Tank Dell gets back, which won't be likely this year.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a pure volume-based guy. The question is, he's getting older. Can he stay on the field? That's been a big issue in Jacksonville. Like, he was very productive. I mean, that was one of the better signings we know that they made for Trevor Lawrence, but then kind of fell out of favor, and then they switched to a new offense after he got hurt. So he's a good slot guy, and they'll get him open. He's dedicated to that. I think you look at the targets, there should be a lot to be had after Nico Collins for Christian Kirk and current state of the Texans. Now they could go and draft a receiver high. That might change some things that we were looking at. But Tank Dell, we don't know when his timeline says he's going to be able to play again. Stephon Diggs is coming off a torn ACL. He's still a free agent. So he's going to have to catch the ball quite a bit. He's a good possession receiver. So I'm not going to go nuts with Christian Kirk. I still think he's a wide receiver 3 because he's not going to give you much touchdown upside. He's probably not going to give you a lot of big plays, so he needs some volume with those receptions to really get it done. But right now, he's got to catch the ball because, again, tight end, other receivers, not really an option for the Texans. And Stroud should realize, okay, I've got somebody here that can get open, so let's just take advantage of as much as we can. But no higher than wide receiver 3 to me. I'd say somewhere between 27 and 36 is where you're looking at him right now. It could go up depending on what else they do. It could go down depending on what else they do. But Kirk, again, just be wary that he's a little older, and the wear and tear is adding up from his days with the Cardinals and Jaguars.
I do think he'll be used a lot like Stephon Diggs in this offense, like they used him before he tore his ACL, Diggs that is. And that worked out pretty well for fantasy until the injury. So I will be interested again late though. Like, yeah, this is not going to be an early pick. It'll be a late pick, kind of like Darnell Mooney last year. He was just kind of a flyer. He goes to a new team and he's with Kirk Cousins and he's automatically pretty much the wide receiver 2 because that's where he landed. And it ended up being, he was very usable for fantasy for a good chunk of the year. So Christian Kirk, I think, is a nice addition to Nico Collins as well, because Collins is like that big play, big dude who can make contested catches and deep balls. With Christian Kirk is more of a possession wide receiver. So I do like these two together, and I think it's a nice fit. Now, Josh Palmer to the Bills. I do think it's an upgrade from what they had last year in Matt Collins or, whoever Josh Allen was throwing to. Josh Palmer, I when I saw this, I was like, this is interesting. Again, wouldn't take him before round 13 in drafts, but it's one of those late round flyers that if he is, if they don't add a wide receiver in the first round of the draft, I do think Palmer's going to be on the field quite a bit. And we've seen him with Justin Herbert when he gets the chance to be a starter. He had many good games in there with Herbert. So I'm kind of interested in Josh Palmer late, depending on what else the Bills add this offseason.
Yeah, right now you would think they'd go in. Khalil Shakir got an extension, and so did Josh Allen. So both of them were happy. You would think that's the primary kind of connection in the passing game. Then it's the rest, right? How much does Keon Coleman improve as a second-year wide receiver? Do they trust him in a bigger role here on the outside? And then you have Josh Palmer would be the third guy in that frequent 11 personnel, but they also can use 12 personnel with Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid. So I think Palmer's a good signing. I'm just not too excited, right? He's a good fill-in. If someone gets hurt, if Shakir is on the shelf, you plug in Palmer, he's probably going to be pretty productive here for this offense. And it helps Josh Allen. It's just another guy that can get open, stretch the field, make some big plays. It has a lot of experience as well. So I think that's a little bit of an extra bump for Josh Allen. Not that he needs that much more in fantasy at this rate, but again, we want him to put up some more wide receiver touchdowns and stretch the field there and not be so dependent on the running there to diversify a little bit so we can feel even better about him in fantasy. So again, this is a sneaky good ad. They didn't pay all that much for him. He's a good complementary guy to the skill set of Shakir. So I think it's a good fit, good signing. We'll just see how expansive his role is going to be.
Yeah, and you make a good point. Like Khalil Shakir might take away too many of the slot targets for him and the shorter targets. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's an upgrade to Matt Collins, who was utilized way too much in that offense, right? And I'm excited for that for the Bills. Now, lastly, Javonte Williams to the Cowboys. We both assume they're going to use a first or second round pick on a running back, right? I don't think they're going to make the same mistake that they made last year and have a terrible running game because they just completely avoided the position. Javonte Williams, I'm sorry, he just hasn't been very good in the NFL, right? And it's been way worse too since tearing his ACL in 2022. Like, it's just not been good for him. He had all the chances in the world with Denver, and you could, like, the first 3 years you're like, well, his offense stinks, right? But last year his offense didn't stink, and there was no competition really. They were begging him to take control of that job, and he still couldn't do it. So this really is just nothing to me, a nothing burger.
Yeah, he has flashed before. We saw the Saints game. That was probably his most notable fantasy game last year for the Broncos. So when you look at it, he's got the talent, ability to put it all together, but I think he did lose a few steps after that knee injury. He was very dynamic, and I haven't seen the same type of back since then. I think the Cowboys are just doing a little bit of a placeholder. For some reason, talks must have fallen off with Rico Dowdle. They said, which back is the most similar to him? I think they looked at Williams. Williams may have been even cheaper than Dowdle for them in the end, and that's why they went there. So not the running back market of 2024, folks. We talked about Jones going back, getting re-signed before hitting the market, and then you saw the Najee Harris move, but we're waiting for Dobbins. Does he go the other way to the Steelers? So the Cowboys made a lesser move then. I mean, there were some backs that they could have had that would have been a little bit more interesting in a potential lead role. But I think Javonte Williams can be just, okay, we signed him, we're done at running back, right? I think everyone still expects them to draft a running back, use Williams as a pretty good backup who can do a little bit of everything in their offense. So still interested to see where they go. Does this keep them from going first round? They have a lot of needs at number 12 overall. Do they wait, try to trade back in later for Amari and Hampton? Do they wait for Caleb Johnson? I don't know exactly what they're going to do, but I wouldn't take Ashton Jetty off the table for the Cowboys at number 12 just because they signed Javonte Williams.
Yeah, and honestly, this is a kind of an important signing because we were saying if they re-sign Rico Dowdle, he's been a part of this offense, and they might, he might steal a little bit of work from the rookie, right? Or it might take time for the rookie to take over Rico Dowdle, and he could just be an annoyance. Javonte Williams, I don't think it's going to be an annoyance. It's kind of, he's going to be the backup. He's going to be the guy that it will come in for a few snaps, a few carries here and there just to give the main guy a rest. But I think if they take Ashton Jeanty or they take another running back early, that's actually going to give us way more confidence to trust that player to get the workload because his competition is Javonte Williams. But that is it for today's show. I want to thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We will be back tomorrow, I'm sure, talking about more free agency signings. We're still waiting on Aaron Rodgers to destroy my fandom of the Steelers. I'm sure that will happen. We will talk then. Bye, y'all.